Welcome to the Leanomics Show. Today we have the privilege of Tim Hendricks being with us from Orangeleaf Consulting, right? Tell us a bit about yourself, Tim. How do you get into this space? I know it's interesting organization, low-code programming, and a bunch of things that you guys do. But tell us tell us a bit about yourself. I know you hail from Holland and somehow found your way mysteriously into Asia. Talk us through your background a little bit.
All right, so I have a software engineering background, right? And I started my career in the Netherlands. And there I started on like Microsoft technology, standard programming kind of things.
So you were one of those programming geeks?
Yes,
okay.
yes, exactly.
That's how you started,
right.
Okay.
On a personal note, I was always interested in Asia, so I lived in Japan for a few years doing my studies. And I came back and moved into like consultancy and software programming. And while I was there, I encountered like low-code development platforms about 10 years back. Right? So low-code development platforms are platforms that enable you to create software without writing the code for it. Right? So it's like a visual programming.
So how does that work? I mean, how does low-code? I mean, is it a software in itself, or is it?
Yeah, but most of the low-code platforms are like subscription-based platform as a service, as they call it. So you subscribe to the platform and you are able to create software with it. It's like a software creation kit, like a Lego toolkit, basically, right? Where you can create any type of system using that technology, right? And this is something that takes out all the like repetitive tasks of software engineering and moves them towards like more creative tasks, right? So what happens is that instead of like building your database and then setting up a server, like all these side activities are taken care of, and you really focus on doing innovative things with software, right? Creating new types of software, which is especially important in this like digital innovation area, where like software has to be created much faster, right? So as a result, we can cut down the software development time by 10 times, which means that not that we are spending less time making software, but typically that we are creating more systems, right? Which is, there's a high demand now for mobile apps, AI-based solutions, right? And the demand is higher than the supply, right? Which we also see on the job market, which we see everywhere. So the solution to that on our side is to cut down the unnecessary tasks of software development.
And so what happened? So you kind of encountered this low-code solutions, and then you decided to immerse yourself into it also.
Yes, exactly. Right. So I was a part of a consultancy company. We started as a small side team, right, looking into this low-code development with 2 people. Right, this is like a 100-person company, 2 people working on like low-code, and that very quickly in 4 or 5 years grew to over 50. Right, because there was a lot of demand for this technology. A lot of companies in the Netherlands and in Europe saw that potential and said like, oh, you can really, we don't need to do this for 1 year, we can get this out in 2 months. And we would say yes, and maybe we add on some extra functionalities to that. So I did that for a while, and then I was on a temporary assignment in Malaysia, and I saw how the people work here and what the potential is here, and I said, okay, that's great. And I also met my wife in Malaysia, so that was very nice. So then we decided to settle down here and really take this technology and put this into the Malaysian market, where this is much newer. Like in Europe and the US, people are used to low-code. This is a standard conversation. You don't need to explain to anybody what this is anymore, right? But for Malaysia, there's this big opportunity because it hasn't really reached yet. Like a lot of people have heard about it, but not a lot of people have actual experience with it. So there's this potential to actually tap onto that market. If you look, let's say, at like the big, let's say Gartner and these kind of companies, they are predicting that by 2020, 50% of business applications are built using low-code technology. Right? Now that adoption might be slightly slower in Malaysia, but it is coming here as well. Right? So, and then I was looking at the market here. We were looking at the market here, and it was like, there's no one really doing this. Like this, we should really start on that. Right. So that's how I.
So you're one of the only few people that. Or are there others that have mushroom at this point in time, or you guys are?
In Malaysia, we're pretty much the first to really settle here and do this. There are others in Southeast Asia and in Asia as well. There's someone in Thailand working with our platform. There's someone in Japan. So there's a few here and there, but for Malaysia, we are definitely the first there.
And why Orangeleaf? I mean, tell us this. I'm sure there's a story to that.
There's definitely a story to that. to keep it short, because I could go on for that one for a while. I've been thinking about that name for a while, but orange is the Dutch national color.
Okay.
Right? And the leaf is like something that grows, something that like evolves over time. So what we do is build like innovation systems, right? So it's this orange is the Dutch origin, and the leaf represents the innovation and the growth that we try to represent.
Or you want to disseminate the Dutch influence across the whole of Asia. Well, that sounds very interesting. Okay, that's interesting.
A touch of Dutch, I would say.
A touch of Dutch. Huh?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So we're going to take a quick break right now. We'll be right back here on the Leadernomics Show. We have with Tim Hendricks here on the Leadernomics Show. Welcome back to the Leadernomics Show with Tim Hendricks. Tim, we were talking a little bit about low code, right?
Yes.
Or low code solutions. You know, the world's changing, a lot more digital. You know, there's some significant challenges. Talk us through how this solution, this low code applications, right? How are we going to use that in organizations, and how does that help us in terms of, you know, navigating this challenging digital world?
Okay, so the main point is, right, that a lot more systems and a lot more processes are going digital, right? So much less paper, much less manual work, and more automated. So point of that is that if you increase the amount of systems that you're trying to innovate, right, you need a different type of approach to creating software and a different type of approach to like running your company, right? It used to be that you start a company, you get like one software package which does your invoicing and accounting, and then you keep it there and you just run your company, right? At the moment, that's not the case anymore, right? Your customers are demanding more of you, right? Your competitors are doing more innovative things, right? A lot of systems are digitized, a lot of processes are digitized. So instead of saying, okay, I buy this piece of software and I keep it here, it is a constantly evolving process, right, of what you need. Right? If you were selling products in retail, it wasn't that long ago that you didn't need an online presence, right? Then a lot of companies moved into web shops. Now, some companies still have a web shop, but most of them are now on like platforms, right? They're like on Lazada, they are on like bigger platforms like Alibaba, right? So this technology component is constantly moving and constantly evolving, right? So on the company side, this also means that the company has to be constantly moving and constantly evolving, and that in turn translates back into the employees, right? And the management of that company has to be aware that this is a constant process, right? Digitization, digital innovation is a constant factor that needs to be weighed in for every decision and needs to be part of your ongoing process of running the company.
Okay, and what would you, I mean, when you come in, right, what do you do? I mean, you're sort of a consulting slash, so you provide a solution, but you also help work through certain processes or structures. Talk us through that process a little bit. Okay. What would you do?
Typically, I look at a company and I look at their processes. Every company has their own processes, right? You can have standardized software, but there's always a few things that are very specific to this company, right? And I look at, okay, what could be digitized? What could be improved here, right? And then I talk to the company and say, like, listen, based on what I see here, like, these are potential areas where you can really benefit from digitizing and from innovating, right? This could be like cutting down processing costs for something, but it could also be offering a completely new type of service to customers, right? Based on digital technology. And on top of that, if they like that idea, it's then about like, okay, how do you execute that, right? Traditional software development, especially here, is very much like, okay, I write a document, I give you this document, right? And then I'll wait for you to come back to me.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't really work with these type of innovation projects where you probably don't exactly know the end result. So instead of having an off-site team of programmers working, you have an on-site team of technical and business people that are working together to create a new solution, to create something new, right? So this is a big change also in organizations here, right? Because a lot of business people, like let's say head of department or C-level executives, they are very much like, no, I want to see it when it's done, right? That's what they used to working. So it's digital innovation is also an organizational change where you're looking to get everybody that is has a part of that process involved in the creation of something new.
So, I mean, I understand. So, innovation is one piece, right? But also there's a people piece to this whole equation, right?
Yes.
And many times you can drive certain innovation, but culturally people are not ready. There's a mindset that's blocking, a lot of the change that. So, how do you prepare? What do you do? I mean, in terms of ensuring that it's not just the innovate. The solution is one piece, right?
Yes.
The other piece is the people piece, right?
Yes. The biggest part, surprisingly, the biggest part of it is involvement, right? And this is what we see when we get people involved. So I just mentioned that we make the business users part of the project team,
okay,
right? And that has a huge impact on their behavior and
they have
on
ownership
their
for it.
Exactly, right? They feel like whatever the result of this project is partially my responsibility, and also partially because of my contribution, right? So there's this ownership feeling, right? That is the biggest change, is to convince companies to dedicate time of their business people to work on an IT project, right? Because these people have a full-time job, right? And they need to be full-time or semi-full-time on a project all of a sudden, right? Yep. Even maybe they are head of a department or they are like doing accounting or something else. But what that realizes is that there's much less resistance on adoption of new technology, but also of new systems that are being built, because the people involved are the people that created it. And the other main thing that I would highlight is the shift from execution to creation, right? This is true on the business side as well, on the very technical, like programmer side. If you have like technical people, a lot of people here are very much used to executing a job, right? They know their job well, right? They have done it many times before, and they are continuing to do a similar type of thing every day, right? Now, digital innovation disrupts that by taking out a lot of repetitive tasks. Yeah. Even low-code is all about that, taking out the repetitive tasks out of programming, for example, right? And out of IT infrastructure. It's not there, you don't need to set it up, it's all taken care of, right? That means that a lot more attention shifts towards the creative process. It means that you have more time to do new things, but that also pulls people out of their comfort zone, right?
True. But I mean, we're going to take a short break again right now, but I mean, another interesting thought is that many people actually fear digitalization simply because they think they'll lose their jobs. Yes. So maybe we can chat a little bit about that and what that means for organizations. We'll be right back here on the Leader on Mix show with Tim Hendricks. Welcome back to the Leader show. We are here with Orangeleaf founder, Tim Hendricks. And Tim, we were talking a little bit about innovation, and the downside of it is that many people are resistant to it. Yes. And one of the reasons, is that people tend to feel that with innovation, with change, with digitization, with all these things that come about, many times the issue is that the business is trying to replace their jobs. Yes. And so there's fear, there is panic, there's all kinds of different emotions that are stirred. How do we address that?
Well, I think that we have been through this before, right? So part of that fear is an instinctive fear of like change, right? That we always encounter, and it is partially justified, but it more depends on mindset than anything else.
But how do you change that mindset?
So, basically, what I always tell people is like, look back at the Industrial Revolution, right? There used to be a time when everything was made by hand, right? And then they invented steam machines, and then all of a sudden, all these people went out of a job, and there was a huge shake-up of like, okay, nobody's going to have a job anymore. All the products are produced by machines. So what are we going to do? right? So what happened is that a whole new type of service industry erupted from that, right? And most people right now, right, they have office jobs. They have jobs that involve doing a process, providing a type of service instead of creating products.
So with every industrial change, I mean, just like, you know, we saw with horses to cars, or even now, I guess everybody's an Uber driver, and soon there'll be driverless cars, so there'll be a whole bunch of them out. So with every change, what you're saying is that there's always going to be different opportunities that crop up.
Yes, the biggest point to take away today is adaptability, right? We have to assume that our jobs in 5 years, 10 years are not the same job as today, right? And
so
that is scary.
Be flexible, and everyone needs to have that mind. But I mean, organizations need to teach it and institutionalize it as a dogma in the organization.
And even at universities, right? There's still very much a mindset of, okay, go to this institution and study accounting for 5 years. But you don't know at the moment, right? If I had a child right now and I would put them through school, I do not know if the profession that we choose today will exist in
a couple of years time.
Even 20 years or something when they're done. Probably not in that size, right? So the most important skill is not knowledge of a specific area or field. The most important skill is adapting to the changes that come.
Very good. Tim, everybody on the Lee Ramee Show is subject to the Thinkonomics challenge, and so unfortunately you're not going to be exempt from that. I'm going to start this challenge, a very simple one. I'm going to pick a bunch of cards. We're going to just ask you some random questions.
Okay.
As fast as you can, just try and answer them. All right?
All right.
Okay. As fast as you can.
Do I get a phone call or?
Well, you get a prize if you do it. If you can answer at least 3. So try to hit at least 3. Right. All right. You can get a phone call with Aaron, our producer, who will, and Moose, our director, who will extend a quick nugget of tip for you. But if you can, time goes on. So I'm going to start the time, and we're going to go right now. So question number 1: would you rather have less work to do or more work you actually enjoy doing?
More work I actually enjoy doing.
Right. All right. What is the one sport currently not in the Olympics that should be included?
I like inline skating.
Oh, okay. Is it possible for society to be overdeveloped?
It is good to stay grounded.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How would the world be if everyone could sense and read other people's thoughts?
Look at Twitter, please.
No, that's just Trump's thoughts. But okay, does my level of giving make me a better person? My level of giving.
I think your sincerity makes you a better person.
Okay. And if you knew today what was your last day on Earth, how would you spend it? That today was going to be your last day on Earth. How do you spend it? A little bit more time.
I would spend it talking to my loved ones.
Ah, okay. Spend time with your loved ones. Okay. How should a company really give back to the community?
By providing actual value to society.
Ah, excellent. And if you were made president of your country, what actions would you take to make your country a giving country with a giving community? Just about right. You can answer that.
I think it all starts with having sincere goals in mind and really trying to contribute something of value. And that is something that...
So really authenticity and sincerity and
yes.
And you did really well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's pretty good. It might be a world record.
Thank you.
You know, we were talking a little bit. Well done. So we'll give you a Thinkonomics set to take home.
Oh, thank you.
There you go, and you can play. You know, you can practice this at home with with your friends and family. You know, one of the things is we talked about low code, and a number of other solutions and innovation and culture and so on. But what are some practical things as a leader I can take back from our conversation that I can straight away implement in my organization?
Okay, the best thing is like trying to keep in mind, right, that change is always happening. I talk to a lot of people that are saying, I want tomorrow to be the same as today, right? Now we can tell each other that, but the most important part to start is to realize that that's just not the case, right? And that my biggest advice would be is for yourself and also for your employees is try to incentivize creative thought, right? Try to get people to think outside of the box, outside of their current position, right? Try to get the type of knowledge and the type of activities that are being done in the company to expand, right? Because that will really help with the adaptability to new changes.
But it also requires, I mean, a lot of leaders will say, hey, my company, everyone got an idea, but it's really executing, right?
Yes.
So the workforce needs to change, right? Somewhat. I mean, ideas is one thing, and there's tons of them. How do we help them to translate them into reality or execute well?
I'm first and foremost, I'm still a business person, right? So everybody that comes to with an idea to me, I would typically always ask about what is your return on investment, right? As a business, you are looking to make money, right? So having good ideas is great, but start with ideas that can create concrete results first. Like, it's great that you have like a small side project or good ideas that like help in the cafeteria or something else. I really applaud that. I really think that's great. But if you want to get started on like digital innovation, look at something that does not take long to execute, like short execution time, and has a high impact on the business, right? Because that will create a movement inside the company to create more change, to create more innovation, right? So the first few projects, short execution time, high impact.
Okay. And my final question, you've given advice to leaders, in terms of practical things that you do. What if it's a young person who's just graduated from university and coming out and say, hey, I want to be like Tim, I want to start up my own company, I want to build something, I want to do something of significance in this world. Yeah. What sort of advice would you give this young person that's coming out into the world to face the world?
Okay, the most important thing I would say is don't look at other people when you start something new. Right? Don't look at like, I want to do what these people are doing. Right? There's a lot of like, this is successful, so let's get into that. I would say, if you have a really good idea, you are probably looking around you and nobody is doing it. And that is when you know that this is something that has potential.
And keep persevering, when you get that big idea, just keep persevering.
Yes, exactly. Like, you need to really believe in it, right? And convince other people to believe in it, which is hard work, but it pays off very well. And I think that is the biggest point, is to have ideas that not everybody is already doing. Fantastic. If you want to be successful.
Tim, it's been wonderful having you on our show, Tim. Absolutely pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for your words of wisdom. We've been speaking to Tim Hendricks here on the Leaderonomics Show.